Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuvamilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Krishna Krishna Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Stutya Deshatayani Sri Krishna Caitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Bhakta Vrinda. Hare
Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityananda Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachane Nivasesha Sanyavadi Pashati Devata Om Ganitamananda Jana Jana Salakaya Chaksus Militan Jana Tatsmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Caitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jana Bhutale Sayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Sapandantikam Vanchakalpatrubhascha Kripasindhuvaivacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Hare Krishna. Continuing this intriguing pastime of Sri Madhavendra Puri, who was traveling to Jagannath Puri to acquire some sweet rice, not sweet rice, some sandalwood, so that the Gopal deity can be cooled. Now, what this pastime is about, and this whole chapter is about, and even the next chapter, is the degree of, maybe put it down a bit, intimacy that one can actually have with Krishna in the form of the deity. That if we love Krishna fully, then, or rather, he reciprocates with us. Yayatamam prapadyante. He reciprocates with us. Krishna in the form of the deity will reciprocate with us as we approach him, as we deal with him. One friend of mine said that there was one time when in the United States many years ago, he told me that when the Pope came to visit in the United States, this was sometime in the 80s, they gave him a very official and very luxurious welcome. So some atheists, the American Atheist Society, complained, you shouldn't be treating him like this, and the, I don't know if it was an official reply, but the reply was, or at least the way my friend told it to me, is that he believes that there is a God, and he's trying to represent God. So we reciprocate with him as someone who's representing God. But you believe in nothing. So we reciprocate with you in that way too. We give you nothing. So therefore, we're being equal to everyone. You didn't think that was funny, Vasudha?
I think it's flawed.
It's flawed. What way?
Well, the other person only believes.
Huh? Well, no, but he was saying, I probably didn't explain his argument. You can't, why are you treating him like that? Just because you believe in that, something like that. And he said, no, we're not just judging him.
I see the connection.
Yeah, okay, anyway.
I think it's a little bit unfair.
Do you think he should have gotten more? The Pope should have gotten more?
No, less. I'm not
You're not a fan of the Pope,
no,
but there's a principle involved.
Yeah,
no, we weren't really.
He appears to be the head of a great.
And anyway, it was funny.
Yeah.
Regardless if there was a principle involved, it was funny. I thought it was funny anyway, because Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, "Yayatamam prapadyante," how you approach me, I reciprocate. So you approach me as nothing, and you get nothing.
That's fair.
There you go. Yeah. So how the degree, and this is what Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach us, or one of the main things, is that there is the degree of intimacy, of relationship we can have with the Supreme, the unlimitedly powerful Supreme Lord, is incredible. It's beyond what anyone else has revealed, that we can actually have this type of relationship with Krishna up to the level of what's available in Sri Vrindavan Dham. It's actually, you can have it. And Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, he was exhibiting that, the intimacy of that relationship. And it was the highest ecstasy for the soul. And by his mercy, that we could also take part in that type of an amazingly ecstatic, intimate exchange. So that's the teachings of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So then, of course, the question is, how can I, who's in the material world, in a material body, in a material mind, how can I deal with something on the spiritual platform which is inherently inconceivable from the material point? So one of the ways that Krishna allows us to awaken that relationship is through the deity form, his deity form, the Archa Vigraha. So these deities, even though one could say they're made out of stone, but they're not stone. Krishna manifests because the stone is his energy. There's so many ways it could be explained. But Krishna manifests himself through the deity. The full potency of Krishna can manifest, can appear through the deity. So when you have exalted devotees, such as Sri Madhavendra Puri, because his relationship with Krishna, because he's living on that platform of his relationship with Krishna, therefore Krishna reciprocates with him in a different way than he would reciprocate with that atheist, for example, who treats him as nothing, so he sees him in that way. So Madhavendra Puri, as we heard last week, he looked at the sweet rice as it was being offered, in the Gopinath Kheer, as it was being offered, and he felt, I shouldn't have done this. This is an offense. So therefore, without even waiting for the sweet rice to be distributed, he just left because he said, my consciousness isn't proper. So he just left, and he went to a nearby marketplace, and he sat down. And what did he do there? The marketplace was closed. But that's what we're going to read right now. Madhavendra Puri left the temple, and he sat down in the village marketplace, which was vacant. Now, Kishore, what does vacant mean? Do you know? Empty. Empty. You know what letter is this that I'm drawing? And what's this?
T.
Empty. But that's not how to spell it. But empty means vacant, and vacant means empty. So if you have a bowl and there's nothing in it, would you say it's empty? And if it's empty, you could say it's vacant. Of course, we know there's air in it, but it's empty and vacant. So what's another way to say empty? Yes. Okay. You remember that? Because you have your examination at the end of the class, okay? So the marketplace was vacant because it was in the evening, it was empty. Sitting there, he began to chant. Caitanya Caritamrta, he began to chant. In the meantime, the temple priest laid the deity down to rest. Eto pujari korila takore shayan. He had the deity lie down to take rest. So in the temples, when there's a big deity, they keep a smaller deity that you can actually lie down, and sometimes they even will have a bed for that deity, and the deity can be put into bed So in this way, because the deity is there, one can offer things to the deity. One could offer a bed to the deity. One could put the deity to sleep. One could offer food to the deity, and fragrance and incense. I remember once when I first did some pujari work, which was some pujari seva many, many years ago. I thought that was, I wanted to make it official, so I wanted to find out what the mantras were for putting the deities to sleep, and at that time no one knew any mantras for putting them to sleep, and I was so disappointed. And then I read a letter from Prabhupada where one devotee asked Prabhupada, how to put the deity to sleep, and Prabhupada didn't say any Sanskrit mantras, but he said, "My dear Lord, please come now and take rest," something like that. So I was thinking I was disappointed. I wanted something more esoteric and everything. And then as I got older, I realized Prabhupada was actually giving the essence, the real point. It's not in the mantras, but it's in the mood. It's in the devotion, in the mood. So when Prabhupada said you go before the deity and you fold your hands and say, "Now, my dear sir," or something, "please now, please come and take rest now. We've prepared this bed for you." So he was actually giving the highest principle, not something that was watered down, but he was giving the real essence. And the real essence was devotion. The real essence was, here you are, and I want to do this service for you. I've prepared this bed for you, and you please now, you lie down and take rest. So the deity was laid down to rest, and Madhavendra Puri, where was he? And he was in the marketplace. And was the marketplace full? Was the marketplace full? Or was it empty? Because it was late at night?
Empty.
Yes, and what's another word for empty? Vacant. What's another word for vacant?
Empty.
What's another word for empty? Okay. Now here's Prabhupada's purport. Although Madhavendra Puri was not interested in eating and sleeping, and this was explained already, that Madhavendra Puri was completely on the spiritual platform. That means that he himself was alive. He, the eternal him, was alive. And his consciousness was on that platform, the platform of eternity, and eternity in his relationship with Krishna. So he was actually living on that platform. And that is the natural platform of the soul. So, therefore, his interest was in serving Krishna, not in the needs of the body. Even though he was in a body, he was Jiva Mukta, he was in a body, he was in his body, but his consciousness was on a completely different level than the body or even the mind. So his interest wasn't in eating and sleeping. His interest in chanting the Mahamantra was as acute, as powerful, as strong, as focused, as if he were an aspiring transcendentalist rather than a Paramhamsa. So a person who's very, very serious about his spiritual life and wants to attain something that he doesn't yet have, an aspiring transcendentalist, he'll be very, very, very serious about his chanting because he wants the attainment. So one may think, as do the impersonalists or the Mayavadis. One may think that one is using this Hare Krishna mantra to gain enlightenment, but once one is enlightened, one doesn't need the method that was used to gain his enlightenment. And the example that the impersonalist Mayavadis use is that you have a ladder and you want to climb a fence. So you take the ladder and put it next to the fence and you climb to the top of the fence, and then before you go across to the other side of the fence, you kick the ladder away because you don't need it anymore. So that's how they view the chanting of the holy names and the worship of the deity. So in other words, there's no devotion there at all. How could if you're thinking of a person as just how it's useful for you, how that person is just useful for you, what you can get out of that person's presence, then there can be no true relationship, or there can be no true love. So that's, in contemporary terms, they call that objectifying. You make the person into, in your mind, an object, as opposed to acknowledging that the person actually is a person, and then having a relationship with the person for him or her being what he or she is. That person, you don't like the person, but you like the what you can get out of that person, what you can use that person for. So, practically speaking, everything in the material world is that. And that's specifically what Maya does. Maya covers the real vision of anything, and it turns it in that thing, so-called thing, into an object for us, for our pleasure, for our purposes. So Madhavendra Puri was on the level of pure spiritual realization, and as Prabhupada explains in the next sentence, that he was still chanting. So he wasn't using the holy name to gain something, but rather he was relishing the association of Krishna through the holy name. The holy name, due to the way he was chanting, was manifesting himself fully. Krishna was manifesting himself fully in the name. So he was actually associating with Krishna as he was chanting the holy name. And therefore Prabhupada says, this means that even in the Paramhamsa stage, one cannot give up chanting. Haridas Thakur and the Goswamis were all engaged in chanting a fixed number of rounds. Therefore, chanting on beads is very important for everyone, even though one may become a Paramhamsa. So there must be some persons who were devotees on one level. There must be some group or consciousness where, I'm beyond the chanting. I don't need the chanting anymore. So Prabhupada was criticizing that, showing the examples of Madhavendra Puri and also Haridas Thakur and the six Goswamis. So everyone, even if you're a Paramhamsa, what to speak of an aspiring transcendentalist, the chanting is important or essential. Prabhupada continues, this chanting can be executed, it can be done anywhere, either inside or outside the temple. And that indeed is the goal, to always be chanting Krishna's names, because in that way we're always associating with Krishna. And Krishna Suryasam, Maya Haya Andakar. And then when one is in relationship with Krishna, it's like facing the sun. And when you face the sun, there's no shadow. And what do we mean by we say there's no shadow? That you see things as they are. You don't see the shadow of the thing. And the shadow of the thing is when you look at the thing as an object. And you don't see it as you don't see the real substance of the thing, the real substance of everything. Its relationship with Krishna. Because this the world, this world, the spiritual world, everything has, everyone have a relationship with Krishna. And that's the substance, and the shadow is to see things as if they were separated from Krishna. So when one chants all the time and is in relationship with Krishna, naturally he'll be seeing everything else in relationship with Krishna. Therefore, Maya Hai Andhakar, there's no shadowy existence. There's the actual substance. As stated, so Madhavendra Puri, so you can chant anywhere, and that's Niyame, Nakala, there's no rules that you can only chant in this place or that place, or at this time or that time. But Krishna is so kind that he makes himself available to us at all times through the holy name. So Madhavendra Puri even sat down in a vacant marketplace to perform his chanting. What does vacant mean?
Empty.
Yes, very good. He even sat down in an empty marketplace because Krishna was in his name, so it wasn't empty in that sense. As stated by Srinivasacharya in his prayers to the Goswamis, Nama Gana Nativi, our Paramhamsa devotee is always engaged in chanting and rendering loving service to the Lord. He's alive. A Paramhamsa. What does Paramhamsa mean?
Jivamukta.
What does it literally mean?
It means still within the body but liberated.
But what does it literally mean? Huh?
Who does not...
Parama means supreme, and Hamsa means swan. So why is the swan? And there's a particular type of a swan called the Rajahamsa that's supposed to have this amazing ability of when you if you have a glass, if you have milk and water there. Now, I don't know how exactly he does this, but he does that look like a swan? What do you think? Okay, so he can drink the water. No, the milk. I was just testing you, Prasmohan, to see if you were done. See, he can drink the milk and leave the water. So why is a Paramhamsa individual realized soul? Why is he called a Paramhamsa if that's the example? Yeah.
Bring Krishna into the world.
Yeah. The essence of the material world is Krishna. So even though it's the material world, there's no material world in one sense. It's from Krishna's point of view, it's the material energy. It's a different energy, but it's then the spiritual energy. But he's there, so he can find Krishna, and he can taste Krishna's presence, even in the material world. So therefore, he's capturing the essence of what the material world is, and the essence of the opportunity that the material world offers. Yeah, because a materialistic person, he's always looking for an opportunity in his life to get what he wants. But what does he want? He wants something not on the parama level, not on the highest level, but he will tend to want something on the material level, on the bodily or mental level. So a Paramhamsa devotee is always engaged in chanting and rendering loving service to the Lord. Chanting the Lord's holy names and engaging in his service are identical. They're the same. Because chanting is serving Krishna. That's one of the means of devotional service. As stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 9 kinds of devotional service: hearing, shravanam, chanting, kirtanam, remembering, Vishnu smaranam, serving, padasevanam, worship of the deity, archanam, praying, vandanam, and carrying out orders, dasyam. serving him as a friend, sakyam, and sacrificing everything for the Lord, apanavedram. Although each process appears distinct, when one is situated on the absolute platform, he can see that they're all identical. Identical in the sense that each one of them connects one with Krishna, because Krishna is the object of the holy name, of the chanting, of the remembering, of the serving, of the worshipping, of the prayers, etc. He's the object. That's all given to him. So he appears through these processes. He manifests himself through these processes when they're done with devotion. So they're all the same in that sense. For instance, hearing is as good as chanting, remembering is as good as chanting or hearing. Similarly, engaging in deity worship is as good as chanting, hearing, or remembering. So this is one of the main elements of what this chapter wishes to tell us through this pastime of Madhavendra Puri that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is narrating in Ramuna at the temple of Gopinath. It's that the deity it's real. He's real. Krishna is actually there, and according to how we approach the deity, he's going to manifest. He's fully there. He's there in the chanting. He's there in the hearing. He's fully there. He's present. We can experience him fully, Krishna, in the form of the deity, in the form of the holy names, etc. So the devotee is expected to accept all 9 processes of devotional service, but even if only one process is properly executed, he can still attain the highest position, Paramhamsa, and go back home, back to Godhead. So what does it mean? The devotee is expected to accept all 9 processes of devotional service, but even if only one process is properly executed, he can still attain the highest position, the Paramhamsa, and go back home, back to Godhead. Because if one is a Paramhamsa in this world, if one is experiencing Krishna in this world, then naturally he's going to experience Krishna. He'll go back to Godhead. But what does this mean if only one process is properly executed? What does properly mean, and how to properly execute the process? All together.
Paying full attention, focusing.
Yes. Yes.
24 hours a day.
Yes.
Surrender 100%.
Yes, but
Sincerity.
yes, but with bhakti, basically, but with devotion. So if you have devotion, that devotion means I'm doing this for you, then you have full attention, and you have, and you'll do it continuously if there's devotion and
Surrender.
and with surrender. This is for you. And with, what did you say?
Sincerity.
With full sincerity, yeah. So bhakti includes all those elements. With devotion, that I'm doing this just for you, please accept it. It will be my great fortune if you'll accept this. I've done this for you, for your pleasure. Of course, say, I've done this for you. We're not in that mood exactly. But it's just the natural mood of the natural devotion a soul has for Krishna. So that's the end of the purport in the verse. So the verse again. So Madhavendra Puri was chanting, and the pujari put the deity to sleep, and then finishing his daily duties, the priest went to take rest. He himself went to sleep. But then he had a dream. And in his dream, he saw the Gopinath deity. And the deity came to talk to him. And he spoke, the deity spoke as follows. Utaha, Uto. Uto, you know what that means?
Wake up.
Yeah. How do you know what that means? Does someone sometimes say that to you? You're not answering. O priest, O pujari, please get up and open the door of the temple. I have kept one pot of sweet rice for the sannyasi, Madhavendra Puri. I have kept one pot of sweet rice. Now, even though the deity is called Kir Chor, the deity who stole the sweet rice, Gopinath is not admitting anything here that he stole it. He said, I've kept it here. This pot of sweet rice is just behind my cloth curtain. You did not see it because after the offering is made, before the deities put the rest, all the areas, the food is taken away and the area is cleansed. But Gopinath is saying that Tomar na janila tahe amara maya. Because of my maya, you couldn't see what I've done, that I put it behind the curtain. This pot of sweet rice is just behind my cloth curtain. You did not see it because of my tricks, because of my maya. So then, a sannyasi named Madhavendra Puri is sitting in the vacant marketplace. What does vacant mean?
Empty.
Yes, thank you. Please take this pot of sweet rice from behind me and deliver it to him. So notice he didn't, I've not stolen anything, but I took it for him. I've kept it for Madhavendra Puri. And awakening from the dream, the pujari immediately rose from bed and thought it wise to take a bath before entering the deity room, because one should be very clean when one enters the deity room. He then opened the temple door after bathing, and according to the deity's directions, the priest found the pot of sweet rice behind the cloth curtain. He removed the pot, mopped up the place. He cleaned up, because that's one of the the two essences of pujari work, cleanliness and, what's the other one?
Punctuality.
Punctuality, being on time. So he removed the pot and mopped up the place where the pot had been kept. He then went out of the temple. And where did Gopinath say that Madhavendra Puri was? In the marketplace. So he went to the village with a pot of sweet rice. He called out in every stall in search of Madhavendra Puri. He held the pot of sweet rice and he called out. Do you know what he called out? Do you remember? You must have done this drama. Did anyone ever play Madhavendra Puri in the drama? Or see the puppet show that we put on? Or read the book? Will he who is named Madhavendra Puri please come and take this pot? Gopinath has stolen this pot of sweet rice for you. Tomar lage Gopinatha kir koila churi. So he's the one accusing Gopinath of stealing. Chori means he did steal it. So he's calling out because he didn't know that sannyasi came in and then disappeared, knowing where he just left all of a sudden. And then Gopinath told him that he was in the sweet rice. Excuse me. With the sweet rice, he told him that he was in the marketplace, and so he was calling out and calling out. Gopinath has stolen this for you. So there's a long purport here where Prabhupada wants to make some points. And the point that he wants to make, I'll go through it a little bit quickly because it's a little bit long, is that everything that Krishna does is on a different level completely than the activities that go on in this world. Now, why? So when he's stealing sweet rice, he's not actually stealing, because we take it that stealing is bad. So he's not doing anything bad, because the good and bad of this world, the morality of this world, is to elevate our consciousness. If we act in bad activities, then our consciousness goes down. And if we act in a sattvic good way, our consciousness goes up. So the morality, the laws of dharma, of good and bad, etc., in this world, don't do this, you should do this. All the smritis, that and the Ten Commandments and the Hadith, they tell you how you should act. Because the idea is that we want to elevate our consciousness, because the grosser our consciousness is, the less we are able to see. To be able to see, just like if there was a white ant. You know what a white ant is? It's an ant. You know what an ant is? How do you say ant in Gujarati? How do you say ant in Hindi?
I don't know.
How do you say ant in Gujarati?
Kidi.
How say it again?
Kidi.
T-D.
Kidi.
Never mind. I'm from Brooklyn. We can't say these kind of things. It's too subtle. Bangla? Pipri. Something like that, yeah? You don't know? You know? Pipri. So, Hungarian?
Oh, you got me there.
In Brooklyn, it's an ant. Why are you laughing? So everything that there was some philosophical point in this. It's completely, I've lost it completely. Do you remember what it is? Huh? A white ant. Yes, or we would say a termite, because it's actually not an ant. It's a mite. It's a termite. So when he looks at wood, because of his consciousness, he sees the wood in that way, in a particular way. But when a carpenter, an expert carpenter, looks at wood, he sees it in a different way. Or if a person who's very cold on a winter's night and has a wood stove looks at a piece of wood, he'll see it in a different way again. So we see according to our consciousness. The thing is there, the thing is real, but we see it according to our consciousness. So what the different laws, moral laws of the world are meant for is to make our consciousness more subtle and fine. Because when the consciousness is more subtle and fine, then it can see things in a more subtle and refined way. So if one's consciousness is extremely refined, completely refined, and he has bhakti, he can actually see Krishna in everything. When he looks at anything, stavaram jagamam deki nadeki taram murti sabatrohaya nija ishtadeva sporti. He'll see Krishna everywhere he looks. Premanjana chorita bhakti vilochanena. So Prabhupada wants to make the point that Krishna doesn't need his consciousness being elevated. So the things that are morally correct or morally incorrect don't apply to Krishna, because everything that Krishna does is on a completely different platform, the platform of transcendence and the platform of love. It's true love. So when Krishna does something, everyone is benefited. If someone steals from another person in this world, then one person is benefited and another person loses. But when Krishna does something, anything, everything, everyone is benefited. So Prabhupada wants to make the point that all Krishna's activities are moral. And the reason, so even when Krishna steals, it's wonderful. When he stole butter, it's transcendental. Now, what does Prabhupada really want to say? He wants to put forward a criticism of that the people who say that Krishna danced with the gopis at night, he's performed an improper activity. Now, raise your hand if you've ever met anyone who said that, who thinks like that. You have, yeah. I also have. Once I was in Bangladesh, and a Christian fellow came to me, and he said, "How could you worship a God who dances with the wives of others in the middle of the night?" So there was no concept of who Krishna was. And this is very common, that people judge Krishna by the standards that they're supposed to keep and they don't want to keep. They judge Krishna by the standards of someone who needs to make their consciousness more subtle so that they can perceive things more accurately. Is that point clear? Padmohan, why is it better to have subtle consciousness? Is it clear?
I think so.
Yeah. What's your understanding?
So that you can understand things better.
More accurately.
Yeah.
With less fog. Just sometimes when you wake up very early and your eyes are only half open and your consciousness you're still half in the dream that you just had of killing all the rakshasas or whatever it was that you were doing. But you're not really dealing with this world yet as it is. Have you ever been in that consciousness where you're half in and half out? Yeah. So when we don't see accurately, but when our consciousness is fine, or sometimes in a class we're sleepy. Of course, none of you. But sometimes if we're sleepy, we don't accurately, we're half listening and half not listening, half in our dream and half in what's there. So we don't really get what's being said. So when our consciousness is crystal clear, so clear, then we actually see reality more accurately. So in Krishna consciousness, the consciousness is very, very fine and subtle. More than sattva guna, even more than even the mode of goodness. So Prabhupada wants to make the point that materialistic people who have dull consciousness that's not refined, not in the mode of goodness even, they cannot understand that whatever Krishna does, because he's absolute in nature, is all good. They cannot understand that. And then Prabhupada quotes some Bhagavatam verse describing the sun. Like if you take even a dirty thing and put it in the presence of the sun, rather than the sun being contaminated, rather than that dirty water or whatever is purified. So from the mundane point of view, the materialistic point of view, some of the activities of Krishna may appear to be immoral, as Prabhupada says, because a married or unmarried young girl cannot leave home to mix with young boys and dance with him. Oh, this is immoral from the mundane viewpoint. The activities of the gopis are accepted as the highest form of worship because it was Lord Krishna whom they approached with their desires in the dead of night. And these things cannot be understood by non-devotees because the only pictures, the only concepts we have in our mind are materialistic. So when we hear about Krishna's transcendental activities, we take our material concept, our material consciousness, our material ideas, and impose them on something that's essentially pure and transcendental. So therefore, because it's actually impossible for someone with material concepts and material consciousness to understand, really, therefore Prabhupada ends the purport by saying, although Krishna is the purest of the pure, mundane people, thinking of Krishna's pastimes that appear immoral, themselves become polluted, because their consciousness is polluted and they see pollution in Krishna's activities when there is none. They see mundaneness, selfishness, when there is none. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu therefore never publicly discussed Krishna's dealings with the gopis. He used to discuss these dealings only with 3 confidential friends. He never discussed Rasa Leela publicly, as the professional reciters do, although they do not understand Krishna or the nature of the audience. However, so Prabhupada is saying that Mahaprabhu didn't discuss Krishna's intimate leelas with the gopis publicly, and Prabhupada ends the purport by saying, however, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu encouraged the public chanting of the holy name on a huge scale for as many hours as possible, because that helps everyone, regardless of their consciousness. And that's the wonderful thing about kirtan, or one of the wonderful things, that you could have different people of different levels of consciousness all together chanting, and everyone will be experiencing Krishna experiencing Krishna, even though they'll be experiencing him on different levels according to the level of their own consciousness. So kirtan is so inclusive in that way. Everyone can participate, even if you're vacant inside. What does that mean? Yeah, and what's another word for empty? Yes, very good. Will you remember that word next week?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Yeah.
We were saying that the shadow is to see things that are separated from Krishna. So I'm a little
As if they were separated from Krishna. That's, yeah.
I'm a bit confused about shadows and separation. When we see the bad things going on around us, is it that we're seeing shadows, things that are separated, while they're actually connected to Krishna?
Yes. But that doesn't mean that the things aren't bad. But Doesn't mean that they're not bad, but it means that we're not seeing that it's completely in the great perspective of things, such as that the reason why bad things are happening is because they're happening to bad people, in the sense that this is Kali Yuga. And it's interesting that that's how in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, describing why Maharaj Parikshit had to leave this world, it describes that in Kali Yuga, or each age, it's getting worse and worse and worse, and people are performing more inappropriate activities, and therefore there's going to be more and more and more and more suffering. And in the presence of Maharaj Parikshit, in his presence, this all couldn't happen. But yet it had to happen, because the natural tendency of Kali Yuga was to go down. But it couldn't happen in Maharaj Parikshit's presence, so therefore Krishna arranged to remove him. That was one of the reasons why Maharaj Parikshit had to leave, otherwise Kali Yuga couldn't happen. So there's a connection between the natural system of things and what happens, and there's also a connection between Kali Yuga and Krishna, in the sense that Krishna comes as Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and that there's also a connection that people are getting their karma, and you could say that's good, even though it's bad karma. And also, so it depends what level of viewpoint you're looking at it from. If a prisoner gets to go to jail, from the point of view of the prisoner, it's not good. From the point of view of the public, it's good. From the point of view of the prisoner, it's not fair. From the point of view of the law, it's fair. I mean, in principle. Does that answer your question? Because you want to know are the bad things that are happening nowadays actually bad, or are they...
How we can see it as connected to Krishna.
Well, people are getting their karma. It's the law. The law of karma is being enforced. And when you have a law that's being enforced, there has to be an enforcer of the law. And who is the enforcer of the law? It's actually, ultimately, it's the super soul. Otherwise, it doesn't work. But good question. Any other questions or comments? Did you want to also add something to that? Huh?
Hangya.
Ant?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I had to Google.
Say it again. Hangya?
Hangya.
Hanya.
Hangya, yeah.
Do you speak sometimes to people who speak Hungarian?
Basic. I haven't spoken for 40, 50 years properly to anyone. So.
Have you ever, if you speak to someone who speaks Hungarian...
I can understand most of what I say, because it was my first language.
Yeah.
But I started English at 4 or 5 year old, and then no one was put on the back burner. But you still, because it's your first one, you always remember and very quickly learn it. Yeah, pick it up very quickly.
Hanya.
Hangya.
Okay, I'll remember that. I'll remember that. Now I have an assignment too.
I'll ask you next week.
I'll forget it. I mean, I'll remember it. I'll write it down.
Do you want to know what it is in Hebrew?
Yes, of course.
Nimala. Nimala.
Nimala. Any other Punjabi? Kada. Espanol?
Hormiga.
Omega?
Friend. Huh?
That's amigo. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Mahendra Puri was ashamed that he thought about the kheer, and then and Krishna is absolute, and then he came to the vacant marketplace and started chanting. So if the name and the person and the deity are the same, it's still, can you explain a bit further on this one?
Oh, you're saying that he left the deity, but he went to Krishna. He wouldn't leave Krishna. But,
so like he's chanting.
But he didn't want to. He didn't want to leave the deity. He just felt embarrassed, and that he had committed an offense. So he didn't want to stay there and take the sweet rice.
It's still associating with the deity in other ways, like chanting.
There's no other way for him. He has nowhere to go. He can't leave Krishna. But he felt he had done something wrong and he shouldn't take that. He wasn't deserving. Yes.
You were explaining.
Is that okay?
You were explaining how the fact that Krishna dances with married women or unmarried women at midnight, that a lot of people, look down upon that. How would you explain that to a non-devotee? Because for me, the explanation that you gave, I easily accept and understand that they have a material perception of it, but how would you be able to explain it to them without sort of bringing them down, being like, you wouldn't understand, or you have the wrong perception or connection to it?
What would be a circumstance?
Like the God that asked you.
What was your reply?
In Bangladesh.
Oh, in Bangladesh? Well, first of all, he was trying to preach to me. So I tried to get out of there as quickly as I could. So he wouldn't. But the reality is, you can. I mean, if someone who's being a little philosophical and has an open mind and open heart and wants to actually have a philosophical discussion, so you can explain why, just as we did, the laws of nature and the laws of morality are to benefit us, but God is above that.
Okay.
He doesn't need to be purified. He's the supreme pure. So whatever he does is all good. Now, if he was a Christian, you could, if you wanted to talk in the language of Christianity, you could probably find something to say. I know one person, it was actually Prithu Prabhu, there was a court case, and he was dealing, and they had accused him, the devotees, of worshipping a god who had so many wives or something like that, and he was dealing with Christians or Catholics. So in the Catholic Church, the nuns, they all take a vow of celibacy in this world, and they wear a wedding ring, and they consider themselves married to Jesus. So he brought up the point that how many wives did Jesus have? And you're accusing him. He did it in a very fiery way. So I mean, it depends depends who you're talking to. People just want to. If people aren't really interested in a true discussion, then you deal with it in one way, because you don't want to argue religion with someone who's already believing in one religion. It just doesn't do any good. You don't change them and they don't change you. But if someone wants to have wants to know how you view something like that, you can explain it to them, in a more philosophical way. I already forgot how to say ant in Hungarian.
I knew you would.
You know everything. Then how come you ask Google? Okay. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Caitanya Caritamrta ki jai, Srila Prabhupada Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Sri